We'd been at sea for 3 weeks, prowling the waters between the Marl Islands and Truk, when the message came through on November 18th. Intelligence had intercepted Japanese radio traffic indicating that a major carrier task force was heading our way. The Shokaku, one of Japan's most formidable fleet carriers, was returning from operations near Rabaul with her escort destroyers. "Morrison, get down here," Kostler's voice crackled through the intercom. I made my way forward to the conning tower, where the captain was hunched over the radio with our communications officer. "Sir," I said, stepping into the cramped space. Kostler looked up, his weathered face grim in the red light. "Jack, we've got orders to intercept and engage a Japanese carrier group. They're expecting us to be in position by 0600 tomorrow morning." I felt my stomach tighten. A carrier meant heavy escort destroyers with sonar and depth charges. It meant aircraft overhead, searching the waves for the telltale periscope wake. It meant we'd be going up against some of the most experienced anti-submarine forces in the Imperial Navy. "What's our ammunition status, sir?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. 24 torpedoes, Kostler replied, mix of Mark 14s and those new electric Mark 18s. The electric fish are supposed to leave no wake, perfect for this kind of work. The Mark 18 electric torpedo was revolutionary. Unlike the steam-powered Mark 14s that left a telltale wake of bubbles, the electric torpedo ran silent and deep. It was slower, only 29 knots compared to the Mark 14's 46 knots, but in a situation like this, stealth mattered more than speed. "I want you to personally inspect every torpedo in the forward room," Kostler continued. "Check the warheads, the guidance systems, everything. We're only going to get one chance at this, and I don't want any surprises." "Aye, sir," I said, already mentally cataloging the work ahead. I spent the next 4 hours in the torpedo room with my team, going over each weapon with a fine-tooth comb. The Mark 18s were beautiful pieces of engineering, sleek, deadly, and completely silent. Each one carried a 500-pound warhead packed with Torpex, an explosive compound 50% more powerful than TNT. One hit from these weapons could break the back of a destroyer. 2 hits could sink a cruiser, and if we got lucky enough to put one into a carrier. "Lieutenant Commander," Torpedoman First Class Tone Kowalski called out from torpedo tube number 3. "I'm seeing something funny with this Mark 18. I crawled over to where Tone was working. He was our best torpedo mechanic, a Polish kid from Detroit who could fix anything that floated, flew, or exploded. If Tone said something was wrong, it was wrong. "What have you got?" I asked, squeezing into the tight space beside the torpedo tube. Tone pointed to a valve assembly near the torpedo's guidance section. "This pressure relief valve is sticking. See how it's not seated properly? If this fish goes out like this, the guidance system might not maintain proper pressure. Could cause the torpedo to run shallow or deep, maybe even circular." A circular run was every submariner's nightmare, a torpedo that curved back toward its own submarine. I'd heard stories of boats that had to crash dive to avoid their own weapons. "Can you fix it?" I asked. Tone was already reaching for his tools. "Give me 20 minutes, sir. I'll have her running like a Swiss watch." While Tone worked on the faulty valve, I continued my inspection of the other torpedoes. Everything else checked out perfectly. The Mark 14s were loaded and ready, their steam turbines serviced, and their gyroscopes calibrated. But I found myself drawn back to the Mark 18s. These were the weapons that would make the difference if we encountered that carrier. "All fixed, sir," Tone announced, wiping grease from his hands. "Valves seated properly now. This fish is good to go." I ran my hand along the torpedo's smooth flank. In a few hours, this weapon might be racing through the dark waters toward a Japanese carrier. The thought sent a chill down my spine. We reached our patrol area just as the sun was rising on November 19th. The seas were calm, with long, gentle swells that rocked the Cavalla in a hypnotic rhythm. We were running submerged at periscope depth, scanning the horizon for any sign of the enemy task force. I was in the forward torpedo room, making final adjustments to our weapons, when the general quarters alarm rang throughout the boat. The harsh klaxon sent every man to his battle station, and suddenly the submarine transformed from a relatively quiet workplace into a tense, focused fighting machine. All hands to battle stations. All hands to battle stations. Kostler stepped aside from the periscope. Andy pressed my eye to the eyepiece. At first, I saw nothing but empty ocean. Then I adjusted the focus, and my breath caught in my throat. There, on the horizon, was a sight that would be burned into my memory forever. The Japanese aircraft carrier Shokaku was steaming directly toward us, her massive flight deck bristling with aircraft. She was beautiful and terrifying, over 800 feet of steel and death, capable of launching nearly 100 bombers and fighters. Range? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. 15,000 yards and closing, reported Chief Sonar Operator Williams. She's making about 18 knots, course 270. I recommend we fire a spread of 4 torpedoes set for different depths to account for any evasive maneuvers. Kostler nodded. Agreed. But we've got to be patient. Those destroyers are screening her flanks, and if we fire too early, they'll have time to spot the torpedo wakes. For the next hour, we tracked the Japanese task force as it approached our position. The tension in the conning tower was almost unbearable. Every man was focused on his job, but I could see the strain on their faces. We all knew that within the next few minutes, we'd either strike a blow that would be felt throughout the Pacific Fleet, or we'd be fighting for our lives. Range, 8,000 yards, Williams reported. But in a few minutes, if everything went according to plan, she'd be a tomb for over 1,000 Japanese sailors. 4,000 yards, Williams called out. Stand by for torpedo attack, Kostler ordered. Morrison, set your fish for a 4-degree spread. I want to bracket that carrier from bow to stern. My hands moved automatically over the torpedo firing controls. Fish set for 4-degree spread. Running depth 15 feet. Speed 29 knots. Range 3,000 yards. This was it. The moment we'd been waiting for. The carrier was presenting her full profile to us now, steaming along without any idea that death was waiting beneath the waves. Fire 1. Kostler commanded. I pressed the firing button for Tube 1. The submarine shuddered slightly as compressed air expelled the Mark 18 electric torpedo. Unlike the steam-powered Mark 14s, there was no telltale wake, just a deadly fish swimming silently toward its target. 1 fired electrically. Sir. Fire 2. 2 fired electrically, sir. Fire 3. 3 fired electrically, sir. Fire 4. 4 fired electrically, sir. 4 torpedoes were now racing through the water toward the Shokaku. At this range, it would take them approximately 3 minutes to reach their target. 3 minutes that would feel like 3 hours. All torpedoes running hot, straight, and normal, reported the sonar operator. I could make out the rising sun insignia on the wings of the fighters, and even see the small figures of deck crews moving around the planes. 2 minutes to target. One of the destroyers was turning toward us now, probably for a routine sweep of the area. My heart skipped a beat. If she detected our torpedoes, she could radio a warning to the carrier. The Shokaku might have enough time to turn and avoid our attack. Destroyer bearing 295 is increasing speed, Williams reported. She's not heading for us, but she's definitely moving. 1 minute. 30 seconds to target. I found myself gripping the edge of the plotting table so hard my knuckles were white. Somewhere deep beneath the waves, 4 electric torpedoes were closing in on their target, their warheads armed and ready. 10 seconds to target. I held my breath. 5 seconds. The entire conning tower was silent except for the hum of machinery. Target. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the ocean erupted. The first torpedo struck the Shokaku just forward of her island superstructure. The explosion was tremendous, a column of fire and smoke that shot hundreds of feet into the air. Even through the periscope, the flash was blinding. The submarine shook from the underwater shock wave, and every loose object in the conning tower rattled. Hit! I shouted. Direct hit amidships. The explosion tore a massive hole in her hull, and I could see water rushing into the ship through the gaping wound. 3 hits out of 4, I reported. She's listing heavily to starboard and down by the stern, through the periscope. I watched as the Shokaku began her death agony. The flight deck, which had been crowded with aircraft just minutes before, was now a blazing inferno. Planes were exploding as their fuel tanks caught fire, sending debris high into the air. I could see tiny figures of sailors jumping from the burning ship into the oil-slicked water. "She's going down," Kostler said, his voice filled with awe. The carrier's list was increasing by the minute. Throughout the boat, every piece of non-essential machinery was shut down. The ventilation fans stopped, leaving us in stuffy, humid air. The crew moved like ghosts, communicating in whispers or hand signals. Even the slightest noise could give away our position to the hunters above. "Sonar contact bearing 090, Williams whispered. "Single screw, probably a destroyer." "She's pinging actively." I could hear the Japanese sonar through the hull, a rhythmic ping. Ping, ping, that seemed to go right through my bones. Each pulse was the enemy reaching out, trying to find us in the darkness below. "Contact bearing 180, Williams added. "Another destroyer." "They've got US bracketed." For the next 2 hours, we played a deadly game of hide and seek with the Japanese escorts. They knew we were in the area, they'd seen their carrier go down, but the ocean is vast, and a submarine running silent is almost impossible to detect. The destroyers dropped pattern after pattern of depth charges, but they were fishing in the dark. The explosions were close enough to shake the boat and rattle our teeth, but not close enough to do real damage. Each blast sent a hammer blow through the water that we felt in our bones, but the Cavalla's tough hull held firm. "Depth charges bearing 270, someone reported. "Close, but not close enough." When we finally broke through into daylight, the sun was setting, painting Thesky in brilliant shades of orange and red. The ocean was empty except for a few pieces of floating debris, all that remained of the mighty Shokaku. That night, as we headed back toward Pearl Harbor, I found myself standing on the bridge, looking out over the dark Pacific. The stars were brilliant in the clear sky, and a gentle breeze carried the salt smell of the ocean. It should have been peaceful, but I couldn't shake the image of those Japanese sailors jumping from their burning ship. "Hell of a thing," Chief Kowalski said, joining me at the rail. "One torpedo, one of the biggest carriers in their fleet." News of our victory had preceded us, and the dock was crowded with reporters, Navy officials, and crew members from other submarines. The sinking of the Shokaku was big news, one of the most significant submarine victories of the war. But as I walked down the gangplank, I couldn't help thinking about the cost. Yes, we'd struck a major blow against the Japanese fleet. The Shokaku had been one of their most effective carriers, and her loss would be felt throughout the Pacific. But she'd also taken over 1,000 men with her to the bottom, sailors who, like us, were just doing their duty for their country. "Morrison," Captain Kostler called out as I headed toward the base headquarters. I served on 4 more war patrols aboard the Cavalla before the war ended in August 1945. We sank 6 more Japanese ships, including 2 destroyers and a cruiser. But none of our subsequent victories had the impact of that November morning when we sent the Shokaku to the bottom. The submarine war in the Pacific was brutal and unforgiving. Of the 288 submarines that served in the Pacific during World War II, 52 were lost along with more than 3,500 submariners. We called ourselves the Silent Service, but our silence came at a terrible price. Yet our contributions were enormous. American submarines sank over 1,300 Japanese ships during the war, including 8 aircraft carriers and 11 battleships. That single torpedo we fired on November 19, 1943, the one that Tony Kowalski's skilled hands had repaired, did more than just sink an enemy carrier. It demonstrated that American submarines had become a force capable of projecting power across the vast Pacific. It showed that no Japanese ship, no matter how large or well defended, was safe from our silent hunters. But most importantly, it proved that victory often comes down to the smallest details: a valve repaired with care, a calculation made with precision, a moment of courage when courage is needed most. In war, as in life, success belongs to those who do their jobs with skill, dedication, and attention to detail. The Shokaku was a great ship, crewed by brave men who fought and died for their country. I honor their memory, even as I'm proud of what we accomplished that day. War makes enemies of honorable men, but it doesn't make them any less honorable. That torpedo, silent, deadly, and true, became a symbol of American victory in the Pacific. But for those of us who were there, who lived through the tension and terror and triumph of submarine warfare, it represents something more personal: the knowledge that ordinary men, doing their jobs with extraordinary skill and courage, can change the course of history. The war ended more than 8 decades ago, but the lessons remain. Freedom is precious, and it must be defended by men and women willing to sail into harm's way. The Pacific is peaceful now, its waters no longer torn by the explosions of torpedoes and depth charges. But beneath those calm waters lie the bones of great ships and brave men, reminders of the price that was paid for the peace we enjoy today. I'm an old man now, but I still remember the sound of that Mark 18 torpedo launching from tube number 1, a soft whoosh of compressed air, followed by the subtle vibration as the weapon's electric motor came to life. It was a sound I'd hear many more times during the war, but never again with the same significance. Because that first torpedo, repaired by Detroit mechanics' careful hands and fired into the heart of the Japanese fleet, wasn't just the beginning of our submarine's war record. It was a promise that American submarines would hunt down and destroy every enemy ship that dared to challenge our nation's resolve. It was a promise we kept.